What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another review, and this time we're taking a look at Nightbreed, written and directed by Clive Barker, based off the 1985 novella that he wrote. Okay, so the overall plot line of this movie is as follows. This character named Aaron Boone is falsely accused of being a serial killer by his doctor, and this leads to a big manhunt led by the police along with his doctor, and his girlfriend Lori is also trying to find him as well. Boone eventually seeks refuge in this cemetery called Meridian, where he starts to live amongst these monsters known as Nightbreed, known as Nightbreeders, I should say, who are creatures that were ousted by humans long ago. So that is the overall gist of this movie. So Nightbreed was the second movie that Clive Barker ever directed after Hellraiser. And I'm going to say this. I don't think Nightbreed is a perfect movie. I think this movie does have a lot of issues with it, and especially to me, it has like a lot of tonal issues. But what this movie does have that I do like is you can see that Clive Barker, this movie shows Clive Barker's creativity in terms of world building, in terms of characters, in terms of just his mind for just insane creativity. To me, Nightbreed encapsulates the best elements of Clive Barker, which is his imagination. Now, also when it comes to Clive Barker, his imagination can get the better of him, and he can end up writing stories that have very, very good ideas, but maybe those ideas are too good for their own good, and he kind of has trouble fleshing them out a little bit. And this movie kind of falls into the category of it has some creative and unique ideas. Like I like the whole mythology of the Nightbreed, of the Nightbreeders. I like how these are monsters that were exiled from humanity but are also from folklore. They're immortal, but they can also be killed by conventional weapons, which is kind of confusing when you try to piece it together. Like, so you can live forever, but yet if I shoot you with a shotgun, you're gonna die. The movie kind of does a real bad job at trying to balance that out, but the most I can get from it is that they're immortal to the point where they can stay, or they can stay a certain way for so long without aging. But if they were to get killed, then that would be the end of them. So like, the immortality aspect of the Nightbreeders is very flimsy at best in terms of Clive Barker trying to explain a lot of that stuff. But the folklore that surrounds him, like I like the whole idea of this being called Baphomet, who is a god that they worship, who more or less worship, and this whole thing about prophecy of them being saved. But it turns out that and Boone being the linchpin of said prophecy. When you get to the end, the prophecy really was that Meridian was going to burn down, and Boone was going to like save them and bring them to the outside world. You know, that stuff was okay. It was interesting, but like I said, if it was fleshed out, if Clive Barker was given time to flesh it out, maybe much more than what he actually did, then would have made more sense instead of just being more broad stroked as it is in the movie. So like, yeah, like that's my issue with this movie, is that it feels more world building heavy and not really story heavy, and that where it can be kind of a mess, because Nightbreed to me is the tale of two cities, where the first half kind of plays out like a psychedelic, almost slasher type of movie, and then the second half is where Nightbreed, the monsters become more characters in this movie, and that's where Clive Barker goes into more of like a dark fantasy element with the Nightbreed, and you also get like a sense of whimsy to it. And that's where it starts to become a tonal clash, because on one hand you have this plot of a serial killer that's killing families, and you have David Cronenberg, who is ultra creepy in this movie and is my favorite part of it, manipulating his patient into thinking that he's a serial killer. And so you got like dark stuff like that, where he convinces Boone that he's a serial killer to the point where he starts to give him hallucinogenic drugs to fuck with his mind. And then all of a sudden you get to the stuff with Nightbreed, and it kind of plays like a dark fantasy. It kind of plays like like that movie, like that Crystal movie from like the 80s. I can't remember the name. So it's like the tones kind of don't mash up, are not really meshing to me. Don't mesh for me. Like it feels weird. And the Doctor's motivation to wanting to go to Nightbreed is just like way he can kill the monsters. Like it. I mean, Cronenberg, like the motivation for the Doctor to want to kill Nightbreed is kind of flimsy. It's not really well thought out. And like the Doctor killing all those families to him is like giving him the strength to go kill the monsters. I don't know. It wasn't really thought out properly, and the motivation is kind of like really just weird. I think if I don't think the Doctor needed a motivation to go to Nightbreed. I think his sole motivation is just to frame Boone for the killings, and he just so happens to follow him to the Meridian Cemetery. And then maybe the Doctor wants to become a monster himself, so that way he can have the immortality to continue to pursue his killings that he's doing in the real world. I think that would have been a slightly better motivation as opposed to what the movie did, because it feels just really like it feels just not well thought out. And I mean, and I wasn't, and like I said, I wasn't really a fan of that. I do like the stuff with Boone and his girlfriend Lori. I buy their relationship. I feel they gotta have a genuine love and rapport with each other, and excuse me, and I think the two actors do have good chemistry. The actors who played the monsters, I thought they were really good. You got Hellraiser stalwarts like Doug Bradley, who plays this character called Lylesburg, who's more or less like the leader of Nightbreed, and he has a lot of good scenes with Boone that I like, where he's more like where he's someone who sticks to the old ways and the traditional ways. You got cameos by Nicholas Vincent, who played the Chatterer. He plays a monster with like a moon face, and I like his character. He's not in the movie a whole lot, but you can tell from his first appearance that he's not evil. Actually, none of the monsters are particularly evil, and that's one of the things I actually do like about this movie. That when you see when you see Nightbreed for the first time, you think these are going to be like these vicious villains who are going to who are out for blood. But it's actually the exact opposite. The monsters are not really evil. They just want to live in peace away from humans, because it's the humans that hate them. Almost in a way, you can almost say that Nightbreed is like Clive Barker's version of X-Men. You know, like the monsters are mutants and they're being hunted down by the humans who fear and hate them. So you kind of, if you want to compare it to anything, you can compare it to that. I kind of like that twist. I like the fact that not all of these monsters are evil. Some, I wouldn't say that some of them are particularly good. You do got some that kind of walk that line between being, particularly this one character by the name of Poliquin, who is one of the first monsters we see who attacks Boone when Boone gets into the cemetery and he bites him. So in the movie's lore, so once a person dies and a monster bites you, you more or less come back to life. It's kind of like a Dracula thing, only not so much. So so that whole thing is okay. That's intriguing. So if a monster bites you, so if you're knocking on death's door and a monster bites you, then you become resurrected as one of the Nightbreed. So okay, that's interesting. I kind of like that. and you maintain and you maintain your intelligence, you maintain who you are as a person and stuff like that. So okay, that's pretty cool. And like I said, I like the stuff with David Cronenberg as this psychiatrist. So I'm gonna say this: I think David Cronenberg, to me, gives the best performance in this movie, because he comes across as legitimately creepy and threatening. And when you look at him, David Cronenberg does not look like somebody like the person in the movie. He does not. He looks like a very unassuming person. Like he's a doctor, so he's gonna be well trusted, and you're gonna take his word for things. But underneath that facade, he's just this vicious, psychopathic person who kills families. And Cronenberg, I think, delivers a very, very good performance. He's like one of my favorite performances in this whole movie. Like if this movie focused more on the whole serial killer aspect and not so much on the monsters aspect, then I think I would have liked it more than how I actually did, to be honest with you. Not to say the stuff with the monsters and that lore isn't bad. I just think it's not fully formed. But the stuff with the psychiatrist had my interest more. Like, this is one of those cases where the more grounded stuff was more intriguing than the whole fantasy side. And that's where I reiterate, that's where I think this movie suffers from a tonal clash. Not to mention, you got Danny Elfman doing the score. I love Danny Elfman, and if this score was in like a Tim Burton movie, it'd be perfect. But for some reason, to me, Danny Elfman's score feels so out of place in this movie. It doesn't make the movie. It makes the movie, and it further adds to the tonal inconsistency, because this movie is kind of doesn't know if it wants to be a dark slasher or a dark fantasy, and it's trying. And Clive Barker's having trouble combining those two elements together. But the stuff he does get right, he gets right. Like the stuff with David Cronenberg, aside from the motivation, that stuff is done perfect. I love it. It's graphically gory, and it just works for me. And to an extent, some of the stuff with the Nightbreed also works for me too. Like, I like the whole mythology and the lore with the Nightbreed. I love the look of Meridian, which is underneath this cemetery. It's got a unique and distinct look, and it kind of almost looks like like hell or the underworld. But I like how it's its own society, and it feels lived in. And the production design of Meridian is flat out fantastic. Good stuff. The makeup and prosthetic effects for the monsters also look fantastic. And I do like the third act where all hell breaks loose in the cemetery, where the humans are killing the monsters, but then the monsters start to fight back when Boone more or less becomes their leader. And he more or less encourages the monsters to defend themselves, which they eventually do, and they fend off the human threat out of the cemetery. And this goes to the whole thing with Baphomet telling Boone that he was the one that was meant to destroy Meridian to let the Nightbreed out of the cemetery, and that's where he no longer becomes Boone, and he becomes this deity known as Cabal, more or less the new leader of the monsters. So like you get all that stuff, which I thought was nice, which I thought was pretty cool. I also like the whole idea of these other monsters known as the Berserkers, who are like these mindless beasts, and they play a major role in the third act, where Boone unleashes them, and it's actually the Berserkers who ward off the humans because they're without a conscience. They just want to maim and kill, and the Berserkers do a good job at doing just that. Oh, and another thing, I don't really think this movie needed another human threat. You have that with this character called Angerman, whatever his name is, who was a cop. He plays a role in the third act. Listen, you already have David. You already got the Dr. Deck. You already got Decker as your villain. You didn't really need this shoehorned cop. And then you have other characters too. Like there's this one character who Boone meets in a mental institution who is scalping himself, and then he eventually becomes a Nightbreed. And he and Boone more or less have like this little association going on. And this scalp guy also has his own vendetta against Decker, and that stuff was okay. That stuff was all right too. So I don't really have a whole lot to say about it. But yeah, I may be missing a lot of stuff. But yeah, those are my thoughts on Nightbreed. At the end of the day, I thought it was pretty good. It's okay. I wouldn't say it's better than Hellraiser, or I wouldn't say it's better than Lord of Illusions. I think Lord of Illusions is a much better movie. But I think Nightbreed is I'm going to give it a solid 6 out of 10. I enjoyed it. I liked it. So yeah, those are my thoughts on Nightbreed. Let me know yours in the comment section down below. Like the video and subscribe, and I'll check it back next time for more. So I also want to mention this little detail that I forgot to mention. So this movie has a couple of different cuts, and the cut that I saw was the director's cut. So the ending that I saw would be different from the ending that someone else may have seen. So in my ending, the one that I saw, after Boone kills Decker, he goes to see Baphomet with this character named Ashby, who's right behind him. At the very, very end climax of the film, of this version, the Ashby character becomes one of the Nightbreed, and he ends up killing Eagerman, who wants to join Ashby into finding and destroying the other remaining monsters. It's actually Ashby kills Eagerman, and also in the end, Lori, who does not want to leave Boone and wants to be with Boone forever, she more or less kills herself, thus forcing Boone to turn her into one of the Nightbreed, and together they go and find a new home for the remaining monsters. I think the director's cut ending is okay. I don't like the whole sequel setup. That's never going to happen. But I do like the idea of Boone and Lori being together. So that's that.